Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here. In this update, we're going to be tracking our next several storm systems along with a heat wave and a cool front. So let's take a look at the overall setup. Going forward, we've got this dominating ridge of high pressure that's pretty much locked over a good part of the west and the desert southwest, bringing the hottest temperatures so far of the season, especially so early on. In fact, record breaking temperatures in some areas. But it's cool up here across a good part of the Great Lakes as well as into portions of the Ohio Valley. Then we also have some instability that's mainly going to be draped along the East Coast with some stronger thunderstorms, and they're likely to turn severe later on this afternoon. If we take a look at the overall hazard map, we've got it lit up across the board, especially into our western regions. Back into California, they've got excessive heat warnings in place with widespread triple digits unfolding across a good part of California, much of the desert southwest. It's mainly the southern flank here, along into portions of New Mexico, as well as into areas of West Texas and South Texas. We do have some windier conditions for portions of the Dakotas, as well as into areas of Iowa. And then we also have a newly warned severe thunderstorm watch for those areas across Virginia and portions of the DC region and back into Delaware. Let's actually zoom in into that severe thunderstorm watch that goes on until 9 o'clock for more severe storms, wind gusts of up to 65 miles an hour, and at times producing some quarter size hail for those areas across Richmond, back into Virginia Beach, as well as Fredericksburg, into the DC region, into Baltimore, where they saw those storms yesterday, as well as into Salisbury, Dover, back into Aberdeen, into Atlantic City, and all the way up into Philadelphia. You could see some strong and some of those turning severe. If we actually break it down for you on the radar depiction, this is about 3 o'clock this afternoon. We're going to be starting to see little isolated bubblers, and this is why we have that severe thunderstorm watch in place for those areas back into Charlottesville, back into Fredericksburg. You get these little isolated bubblers. I think it's overall about 30 to 40% coverage, but if you're underneath one of those, they could be packing a punch and producing some, at times, some quarter size hail within the DC region, back into Baltimore again. And those could swing over into Indianapolis. And as we go into that 7 o'clock time frame, that's going to be shifting off to the southeast. And now the instability is going to be towards the Lexington Park region as this shifts out of the Dover area and heads towards Salisbury as it continues to dive further into the East Coast. And by then, that thunderstorm watch will be likely going to expire. But here's the overall big picture for the rest of the country. We've got mainly the instability really highlighted across the coastal region. So there's several pockets of today right here across areas of the East Coast here, but we also have more instability, especially for central and southern Florida here. And then there's also another pocket of energy that could get unload across the Texas Panhandle and far western portions of Oklahoma. Those could be a little bit stronger, some larger hail producers, and kind of bubbling up in the heat of the day right there along that dry line activity. But for the rest of the country, it's actually a fairly quiet day and pretty just a ridge of high pressure going to be over that region. Because here's the overall heat wave. Yes, some of these areas are seeing the first round of dangerous heat this season. In fact, areas across the Southwest, even Las Vegas, they could actually unload 112 degrees today. If that actually happens, it would be the earliest ever observed, even for them. I think even Death Valley, if they get 125, they will also experience their, earliest 125 on record. So yes, they're already expecting really intense heat, especially so early on, but it's mainly along areas to the south where they've got that ridge and the dominating ridge and the record temperatures that's been unfolding for many weeks now, especially into Mexico. That is actually finally lifting a little bit further north. And as it does, now the U.S. is going to be impacting into that heat wave. And so we're going to be dealing with that. And we're also going to be dealing with the northwest flow as well, likely coming back. So by the time we head into tomorrow, we're going to be dealing with another little disturbance that's mainly going to be highlighted east of the Continental Divide, those areas across eastern Colorado, that's going to swing into areas of Kansas and back into Oklahoma again with more instability and more, chances for severe storms. So yet another day, this storm complexes is likely going to enhance east of the Denver region. So those areas back into North Platte, back into Goodland, as well as into the Hastings region, into Nebraska, and areas of Kansas could see those isolated bubblers. And then further south into Dodge City, back into the Amarillo, Texas region, into Wichita, into Topeka, as well as into Omaha and Kansas City. Those are the more favored areas to seeing those marginally to slight severe storms that could unload some damaging winds, some quarter size, if not some golf ball size hail at times, especially in Nebraska. And then likely you can't roll out a spin up tornado or two, within that region, because this is what the surface map would actually look like by the time we head into, Friday afternoon, Friday evening time frame, as things kind of unload here across the middle of the part of the country. And because of the trough up here across the Great Lakes and portions of the Mid-Atlantic, they are going to bring some elevated light to moderate rain showers for those regions into Pennsylvania, back into Vermont and New Hampshire, as well as into Maine. And then Florida, I think, wet for a good part of the week, especially as little cool fronts actually going to be sagging all the way down on the coast. And so Florida is going to be hit with, heavy rain almost on a daily basis. But here's the breakdown. So here's the setup for Saturday. We still got the ridge of high pressure going to be unloaded across a good part of the west. It's almost like the ring of fire is likely starting to set up, right? So with the ridge pushing in from Mexico, that puts the ridge and kind of the ring of fire where, storm tracks have to go like up and over the ridge, typically what you see in the summer months. And that's exactly where the storm instability is likely going to be, right along that ridge. And underneath that, we are going to be producing some severe storms. So likely headed into that Saturday time frame, here's where they get going again, likely east of Denver region, back into Kansas, as well as into portions of Oklahoma, right along that cool front, if you will, in those areas back into Missouri, as well as northern portions of Arkansas. That's likely where the instability is. And yes, again, mainly along the coastal regions, that's where you have some of those elevated, warmer temperatures off the Atlantic and going to produce those showers and thunderstorms as you kind of bubble up the atmosphere, in the heat of the day. But there's your heat, folks. We're already hit meteorologically summer, and we're going into the hottest months of the year, and we're going to be seeing a lot more triple digits on this map going forward, with widespread 90s for a good part of the south and southeast, triple digits for a good part of Texas and to Oklahoma, reaching those areas into the 90s, a bit to Kansas by then, much of the desert southwest, as much of the the northern regions actually experience some really nice weather. I mean, 78 degrees for a high temperature in Iowa. That's a good day. 77 in Indiana. So yeah, not everybody is going to be experiencing that ridge of high pressure, at least for now, as we head into this weekend. So, but that's where the storm track would likely be. So as the cool front just slowly sags south, yes, these areas are going to be underneath and overturning that atmosphere back into Dodge City, portions of Pueblo, Colorado, and back into Woodward, into the Oklahoma City region, into Wichita, and getting a little bit heavier instability, a little bit higher rain amounts as you swing into eastern portions of Oklahoma, especially as you get into Arkansas and southern portions of Missouri, get back into the Joplin region, as well as into Springfield, further south into the Fort Smith region. This will likely be right along that convergence zone where the cold front will lie for your Saturday. But going into Sunday, that's just going to sink a little bit further south as you see much of the ridging, right? Much of the ridging actually goes back into Mexico. That allows that ring of fire, if you will, to push a little bit further south, right? Cool front's going to allow a little bit further south with the ridge shifting further south into Mexico. So that's going to put the instability further south, as well as the more trough inversion is still going to be impacting those areas across the Northeast with some of those cooler anomalies. But overall on Sunday, this is where the instability would likely be. So a pretty good rain swath across a good part of the Texas Panhandle for those areas into West Texas, North Texas, portions of Central Texas, but especially into Oklahoma and Arkansas and portions of Louisiana back into Mississippi here, getting into those areas across southern portions of Missouri. That will be on the day on Sunday night, especially. And then again, going into Monday, there's the cool front sinking just a little bit further south as northwest flow comes back in the picture. So, northwest flow is what we've seen as of late, and that's exactly what the pattern is going to be unloading. These storms blow up across the Rockies, they traverse down from the northwest down to the southeast. So those areas into Kansas, the panhandle of Texas again, North Texas, and into the deep south, going into Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, into Georgia, and then swinging further south where the cool front is. And yes, that puts Florida back into play again with more sporadic rain showers and heavier thunderstorms. And, there's the cooler air, right? It slowly sinks a little bit further south. So the ridge of high pressure doesn't go away anywhere across the west. Underneath that, you got a lot of sinking air and very difficult terrain in that type of atmosphere. So it's been bone dry for a good part of the southwest regions, but it's the middle part of the country. That's where they've been getting all the action. Now with the cool front and the northwest flow coming back into play, that's going to put more instability across the middle part of the country and bring more elevated rain showers as well. And that's exactly what we see on Monday. Northwest flow becomes alive and well again. Those same areas get hit again, starting from Montana to Wyoming, traversing down into Colorado, back into the panhandle of Texas, into western Kansas, western Oklahoma, and then swinging down through west and North Texas. And those would likely swing down into Louisiana. And the same setup on Tuesday. Same northwest flow type setup, unloads with the ridge of high pressure out west. That unloads the atmosphere across the Rocky Mountains and swings down this corridor. So at times they are going to be turning severe with some of that larger hail, but these are mainly wind threats, not a straight line wind damage with this activity. But yeah, we've been in this El Nino, folks, for a better part of a year now. It actually started on June the 8th, and look what it's done across the country. Just a year ago, 45% was not even in a drought across a good part of the country. Now 74%. It's done a major dent with this El Nino. Only 26% of the country is actually experiencing some sort of drought conditions, and they put a dent in those droughts as well, from 54% down to 25. D1 areas of 21% down to 12. 7% down to 3, and some major droughts even dented as well, from 2% to less than 1% of the area. And then exceptional drought is almost pretty much non-existent. So yes, there are some areas, to the exception where southern Florida is actually in a drought. They're going to be eating away that as well with that stalled frontal boundary. So there's a lot of rain coming, and that will slowly eat away. But yes, good part of West Texas, South Texas, where these fronts just hasn't been able to make it. The monsoons, the desert Southwest has been pretty much, high and dry for a good part of the area. So that's been, non-existent, but, so there's not every part of the country, but for a good part of the country, the El Nino has taken a major dent in a lot of the drought and has kind of wiped it off the map, for now. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update. Why I protect you before and after storm.